we did Shaar HaBitachon last year, and we got well into it. And it's funny because if you go look at our recordings on YouTube, our last class, we're discussing this very strange new concept and masks, and something's happening, we're not quite sure. And then Shaar HaBitachon had to stop because of COVID. So now we have a new Sefer, and they did an incredible job. It was organized by Chainu and Kahas. And so we decided it's time to do it again. So here we are. And then by incredible Hashgacha, this is this month's Rosh Chodesh Society program speaks about Bitachon. And I attended Mrs. Jacobson's share and loved it. And I said, can you please come do this as our kickoff, because we're about to start Shaar HaBitachon. So that is how we got to today. So today is the kickoff. We're not yet opening the Sefer, although after Rita finishes over here, she's going to announce everybody who already ordered a Sefer. We have a whole box with a piece of them. And if you didn't yet order, I just heard the Kahas run out, and so we're the ones that have it. And it's a discount, so it's a double winner. So if you didn't yet order, they're $22, and plus I think they're $27. And you are always welcome to order right here, right now. And Ruth is about to mention the names, or just kidding. I'm about to mention the names of whoever ordered and pick up already. So we have Racha Zirkin, Chani Okanov, Rachel Spiro, Shelby Aronson, Ruth Seliger, Adina Lapine, Yosefo Reisenberg, Mushka Blau, and Ruta Cohen. Yay. So these are the people that already ordered a Sefer, and you can come pick it up from me. Okay. And with that, I would like to introduce Mrs. Shaindy Jacobson. She has been an incredible friend of Living Chassidus for years now, and we've had the great success of having her farbreng from of all kinds. Even last year over Zoom, she spoke about her childhood in Crown Heights, and we gained so much from it. I still live with some of those stories. And now we have the great success of seeing her in her element, how much more so, because she is the director of the Rosh Chodesh Society, which is part of JLI, and we are so lucky to have her. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow. Whoa. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. It's been a while. And the Hashgacha process is even further, because really, at the class you were at, would have really been one of the last classes. But because, so there were some unfortunate things that happened in the few months in the winter that I was unable to give the classes there, and they were pushed off. So I was teaching lesson 4 when you came, even though really I would not have been teaching. I would have been teaching like lesson 6 or something. So
wow.
Okay, so it's part of what the lesson tells us. We are where we're supposed to be. Exactly. Okay, so I do want to just say this because I want to give credit where credit is due. Yes, I do love the Rosh Chodesh Society, and it's really my baby. But I have to say that it's part of JLI, and I want to say that I want to say a public thank you to them, and give all the credit goes to JLI and the organization, and for creating all these things and giving us the ability to share it with other people. And I think one of the most beautiful things about my job is that I could say that there are literally thousands of Jewish women all around the world, everywhere, from Tasmania to New York City, that are studying the same thing every month. And it's really a remarkable thing. So I'm welcoming all of you. Now you're also part of it. So welcome to our Rosh Chodesh Society. Okay, so this class is about, basically, it's about figuring out how to deal with stress and things that are negative, and we'll explain that a little bit later, and still be able to achieve happiness. And the key to all of this is very, very much related to the concept of bitachon. And together we're going to discover how that is possible. So just to begin, okay, this is our journey from I to yay. basically what we did with all the lessons was, it was called the Code to Joy. I'm just giving you the context so it'll make a little sense to you, even though it's not so relevant. And all of the lessons have, the names are related to the letters J-O-Y. And basically it's overcoming stress through positivity. And we will see together in a moment what this means. So before we go on, I want to just ask you a few questions, okay? Over the past 2 weeks, how often, you don't have to answer, obviously, think about it, you don't have to answer in public. Over the past few weeks, how often have you experienced the following? Not being able to stop or control worrying, okay? Another question. Do you worry a lot, a little? You know, it's all relative, but how much do you worry about certain things? When you think about what you worry about things that are in your control, or do you worry about things that are not in your control? Do you ever have feelings that something terrible is about to happen? You know, I know people that they literally tell me, I live waiting for the next shoe to drop. And it has to be a very, very painful, difficult way to live, because while we're living, we're supposed to be living and enjoying and seeing the good in life. But if we're always preoccupied worrying about when the next boom is coming, it's a very scary way to live. I think, at least in my life so far, Baruch Hashem, I hope I live many, many more years, and all of you should live very happy, healthy, beautiful years. I want to say that this has probably this period of time that we are living through, the last year and a half or so, has probably been one of the most stressful ones for all of us here, for many of us here, I should say. Probably the strangest, and in a certain way, the most very worrying, very frightening, not only with COVID, but other things happening in the world. Eretz Yisrael, people's worrying about the escalation of anti-Semitism and all kinds of things that are happening in the world that could feel, and if on face value, they are very, very worrisome. So how do we deal with this? And what is the answer? What does Torah tell us about how to deal with this? And of course, what does Chassidus tell us about how to deal with it? And not only to understand the mechanism and the mechanics of it, but also how to actually apply them and make our own lives better in a personal sense. So I want to just share with you first a particular verse. It's a pasuk from Mishlei, written by Shlomo HaMelech, which says in Hebrew, Daga belev ish yashena. What does that mean? A worry in a person's heart, cast it away, okay? So yashena, here you can see it on the screen. What does it mean? One of the literal translation is, if somebody has a worry in their heart, I'm worried about something, I think we could all sit now for a second and think about, and we'll have probably more than one thing that comes to mind. What should I do if I have a worry in my heart? It tells us in Mishlei that I should cast it away. Okay, what does the Talmud do? The Talmud takes this phrase from Mishlei and says the following, that what should we do? Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Ashi say, what is it? What should we do? Yasihena la'acherim. One says, cast it from your mind, cast it away from your mind like this. The other says, cast it onto others. So if I have a worry, I can do two things. I'm told I should just get rid of the worry, or I'm also told that I should cast this worry upon somebody else. Now, if you think about this for a minute, what does that mean? Cast this worry upon somebody else, not God forbid. The Talmud wouldn't be telling me that I should, God forbid, wish this on someone else. No, that is absolutely not the solution. What is the solution? It says cast it upon someone else, share it with another. What does it mean to share it with another? It means the following. It says, what does the Rabbi Yitzchak, what does the Frierdiker Rebbe say to a certain chassid, which we'll get to in a minute? He says the following words. He says, "Upiresh hatzamach tzedek le'acherim rak beguf, avol meuchadim itai imai, shemargishim es inyanai." What does the Tzemach Tzedek say when it says cast it upon others? Others in body, but not in spirit. In spirit, we are united. So what does the Tzemach Tzedek say, if I have a worry, the original pasuk in Mishlei says, I have a terrible worry in my heart. What should I do with it? I should push it away. I should get rid of it. The other explanation is that how do I get rid of it? I go and I share it with another person. And why should I share it? And what kind of other person is this? It doesn't mean I should share it with another person that's totally unrelated, that doesn't care about me. It's somebody else that they're separate from me as a human being, but in spirit and in mind, they're my friend. They want to help me. So one of the things that the Tzemach Tzedek writes, he writes to a certain Chassid who was apparently very worried about his finances and about his health. And he writes a letter to the Tzemach Tzedek. Now, we don't see the letter that he writes, but we could surmise from the answer what he writes, because the Tzemach Tzedek says to him, you write to me about your worries. And I want to tell you, the worries you mentioned, number one, they are not worries. You have nothing to worry about them. And he says to him, sometimes a person has real worries, and they could also be dealt with. But in your case, they're not substantial. Don't worry. They're not real. Your health is good and your finances will be good. Everything is okay. What should you do? You should go and you should talk to another. And the Tzemach Tzedek says there, and you should talk to another. How? You should talk to them. Your discussion should be from the heart. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says about this a very beautiful thing. That why did the Tzemach Tzedek say that you should talk to them from your heart? If I come to you with a problem, it's a cerebral issue. It's something in my mind. I have an issue in my mind. I come and I say, okay, I need wise counsel. Let's discuss it. So I think you're my good friend. I think you care about me. You're smart. Together we could discuss it and you could give me advice. Tzemach Tzedek is saying, not only should you talk about it with another person, from their mind, their brain advice, but they should feel it in their heart. They should connect with you in their heart, and this way they'll really be able to talk it through with you and give you sound and good advice, and you will connect. And he says another reason why Yashena, pushing it away in Hebrew, that's how we get the other verses. Yasihena is that you should share it with somebody. If you change the Nekudus, Yashena is that you should push it away. Yasihena is that you should speak about it. Why should you speak about it and with another person? You should speak about it because the Rebbe says is very, very practical advice, that when you articulate something, you really get the clearer picture. And we all know how true this is. Like I remember when I was a kid in school and we would get together to study for a test, a midterm, a regent, whatever it was. Of course, we studied all through the night. The truth is that for 4 hours we ate and laughed and joked, and for 1 hour we studied. Okay. But when we studied, the point we all knew that if each of us would take one piece of this material that we had to know and say it to somebody, to each other, we would know it that much better. Because when you have to explain something to somebody, you have to know it pretty clearly in your mind. And when you talk something through, it becomes clear in your mind. I don't know if you ever had this experience, but I have had it many times, fortunate or unfortunately, where I would go to let's say I went to hear a lecture. And I came home and I said, wow, that was outstanding. Really, really brilliant. And somebody in my house would say, okay, what did the person say? And I opened my mouth and I would say, well, they said, I really could not repeat what they said. Now, somewhere in my mind, I really heard what they said and I understood, but I certainly did not know it well enough to be able to re-articulate it to somebody else. So this is what the Tzemach Tzedek is saying. He's saying the following. He's saying that how this works is, we have this issue, we have a problem, Yashena, we should get rid of this problem. Now, and then he says the other way is to speak about it with somebody. Okay, now what about getting rid of the problem? Is there also a second way to do this? Speak to somebody, because between us, we know very, very well that, I don't know if you ever tried it, but try to get rid of a negative thought, try to get a certain thought out of your mind. It's not very easy. The easiest way, it's never easy, but from all the hard ways is to cast it out of your mind is to replace it with a different thought. That is what we learn in Tanya, where it speaks about Hesach Hadas, don't give it credence, whatever. Or what would the Rebbe always tell somebody? Your mind needs to be filled up. If you don't fill it up with good things, it's going to get filled up with negativity, with negative things. And the example is very simple. Take a box and put in a coin. And if it's empty and you shake it up and down, it makes a lot of noise. But take a coin and take a box and fill it up to the brim, shake it. It'll be very heavy, but it's not going to really make noise because there's no space for it to make noise. We all have thoughts in our head that make noise. And sometimes you want to just shut it off and you can't. It's very hard to do so. So what happens? Here we get the real explanation, the real tools from Chassidus, how we could do this. And the Tzemach Tzedek actually writes to this chassid that we spoke about. The Tzemach Tzedek said, you can get rid of the thought. But how? You have to replace it with something else. Now, lahavdil, but Dostoevsky said that we all know the following. If I tell you, do not think about a polar bear for the next 10 minutes, what will happen? He writes, you will not be able to get rid of that cursed polar bear, no matter what you do. Now, I remember once doing something similar, not exactly like this, with my students in Beis Rivka High School. And I told them for the next 5 minutes, you could think about anything you want, but not about, whatever it was, a red apple, okay? But whenever a red apple does come into your mind, clap your hands. It took very few minutes till there was lots of clapping going on in the classroom. That was the point. The point is that when you have something in your mind and you try to get rid of it, the fact that you're not supposed to think about it keeps coming back to tell you that, 1 minute, I'm not supposed to think about you, get out of here, right? And then it comes back. And then, so it's almost like a vicious cycle. So what does the Tzemach Tzedek teach us? How could we actually do it? He says, we are not, I should go back a second. Oh, I see, it's not, okay. We are not hostages of our emotions. How are we not hostages of our emotions? Okay, so here we could figure this out very, very easily. I shouldn't say easily, but we could figure this out through the advice of what the Tzemach Tzedek tells us. What are we supposed to do to get rid of these emotions? We have here, I see it's not, I think it's, okay, whatever, it's not working so correctly because it's coming up all at once, but it doesn't matter. Okay, we know that we all have certain things that the Eibishter gave us. And actually the class before this one, we explained this very well, but we don't have too much time now, but I'm sure you all know this, okay? We have, the first faculty we all have is the Chachma, which is what? It's that first spark of creativity. So say, for example, I don't know if any of you ever had this in your life, but I have it all the time. I'm in the shower maybe, or I'm finally got into my bed and I'm going to take a good book and read. All of a sudden I get this brilliant idea. You know what? I have a great idea. If I really work on this idea, I could become a millionaire. I could produce something that nobody thought of yet, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then the problem is, I hope you're not like me in this area, because if you are, the idea remains that creative spark and never ever moves anywhere else. But if I was a little more motivated, maybe what would be the next angle? The next step would be the Bina, which would be the logical break that I would sit down either with myself or with people that are knowledgeable in this area with a pen and a paper, with a calculator. We would figure out, what would it take to really make this product? How would we do it? Where would we produce it? What would, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now it's a product and here it is. Now the problem is I need to do something with this. How will I do something with this? Now I need the third step. What's the third step? That's Das. The Tzemach Tzedek explains that Das, what is Das? Das is the process of those two things, the Chochmah and the Bina, the creativity and then working it out, becoming personal to me and emotional to me. Meaning to say, now, if I take it to the next level of Das, I am totally committed with my heart and soul. I am passionate about this project, and I am going to do it no matter what. If I have to go and ask people to invest money in it, if I have to not sleep for 3 days and 3 nights, if I have to travel to Europe to be able to, whatever the case is. Why? Now I really care about it. Now it's in the process of das. And the Tzemach Tzedek makes a very interesting observation here, but we all know this from the teachings of Chassidus, that the faculties we have, we could work on them, but pretty much they're very, very hard to change. The faculties that we're born with, we all have all of them. And some of us, everyone is wired in a different way. So some people, some things are more dormant than other people. It's a very, very hard thing to change. But our levushim, which are our speech, thought, and action, those are easier to change. Why? Because like we can't change the person, but we could change the clothing, right? So I could work hard on my speech, I could work on my action, I could work on my thoughts. So the Tzemach Tzedek says, when you want to push away a negative thought, you have a lot of stress and you're trying to get rid of it, you're having anxiety and you're trying to get rid of it, what should you do? You should employ your machshava, dibur, and maaseh. Your thought, your speech, and your action, that is able to be to control how you feel. And I just want to mention here that with all the learning of Chassidus in the world and all of these techniques, the Rebbe always told people that, yes, we have the ability to do this, but none of us have to feel bad or feel embarrassed or feel ashamed if we need help to do it. Sometimes it's a friend could help us. Sometimes it's a professional could help us. It doesn't mean that it's easy, and everybody's life has different circumstances. Some people find it very easy to squash their anxiety or maybe don't have anxiety. And some people find it very difficult. Why? Because their life circumstances are very different and they live through different things. But is it possible to do? Yes. How is it possible? And here comes in the idea of it's possible if we fill our minds with good thoughts. And what is the most, if on something engaging, like we spoke about before, here is where we come to the concept of how bitachon helps us deal with all of this. How does it help us? And
sorry, Nancy, what was
sure.
the connection to like the bouncing to your mind?
Okay, so now you have das. Now it's an emotional thing, right? Now you're asking me from that, right? Yeah. Exactly. Now you're emotionally invested. Now, once you're emotionally invested, how do you deal with it? You have your faculties that are able to. What do you do with it? You use your machshava, your dibur, and your maaseh in order to deal with it. Okay. Now your machshava is your thought process, right? What do you do with the thought process? You have to be able to either, you have something, you have an issue, whatever the issue is. You could use Tzemach says you could use your thought process to deal with this issue. Now you might say that it's too hard. How should I do this? It says you have to either speak to another person about it, or you have to throw out that thought process and develop it, switch it for something else. That's you're able to do. It's much easier to do that than to not have it to begin with. What God gives us, He gives us. For example, like none of us could explain why do some people have the ability, why are some people born, let's say, into a beautiful, wonderful, happy, healthy, functional family. And some people are not. And none of us have the choice. This is wherever Hashem puts us. So Hashem puts us somewhere, like, it said the following, no baby, no child is born into this world saying, I'm not good, I'm not lovable, I'm not functional, I can't do whatever. There's no such thing. But the issue is the minute the baby comes into the world starts to influence the babies. If the baby is raised in a way with love and everything else, the baby grows up and has a lot of tools to be able to deal with whatever comes its way. However, we all know that there are millions, unfortunately, of people in the world that have very difficult circumstances, and they somehow, how do they manage? And there's different kinds. Some people manage very well. They're very resilient. Some people don't manage so well. They're not so resilient. Now, so you could say, we come back to this concept that we're talking about, that let's say somebody is born with, they're wired in a way that they could take certain things more than somebody else. But does that mean that the person that is not cannot learn those things? No. According to Chassidus, you may need more help to learn that person, but they're able to do it by working very, very hard. Do they have to take the whole burden on themselves? No. They need people to help them in all kinds of ways and all kinds of things. And here is where it comes to what does the Rebbe say, that what is the actual tool that helps us do this? Think about the Perek Chaf Gimel in Tehillim. We all know that's a very well-known Perek. Lahavdil, even in the rest of the world, it's very well known. We know it as Perek Chaf Gimel, which is Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem Roi Lo Echsar. Okay, it's famously known as the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now, what is this Perek about? If you look at this Perek Tehillim, it speaks about Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem Roi Lo Echsar. David HaMelech is saying the following: Hashem, I am not fearful. And he goes on, he says, because he speaks about when I go through the greener pastures, Hashem will be with me. The greener pastures, of course, means the good things of life, the beauty, the blessings, etc. But then he also says, Gam ki elech begeit salmavis, even when I go through the valley of death. What does he say? Lo ira ra ki ata imadi. I will not be afraid, and it will not be bad for me because you are with me. And it says David HaMelech specifically uses this idea of a shepherd. Why? Because a shepherd, an excellent shepherd, a faithful shepherd, we learn this, that a shepherd does this with animals, how much more so we should do this with human beings. Faithful shepherd, what does he do? He is very careful. He doesn't just herd his animals and just, stick them all together. When he takes them to pasture to eat, he takes first the young ones and he puts them first by the softest, most tender grass because they're not strong enough to have to bite, then he takes the elderly sheep and he gives them the grass that's easy for them to eat. And only then does he take the ones that are the palest, the hardiest, the strongest, and he puts them to chew the grass it's the hardest. Why? Because their teeth are the strongest. For them, it's easy for them to eat that. Plus, it gives them, I guess, the workout that they need. So this is a metaphor for us to understand what is he saying in this Perek. He's saying that we say it's very easy, have bitachon, and Hashem is going to take care of you. The question is, why is it so hard to have bitachon? And if we think about it, we could sum it up in really a few words. Why? Because we live in a world where we take things for granted. But what does Chassidus tell us? If we, instead of taking things for granted, we would see these things as granted, our lives would change. Meaning to say, how much time and patience and effort do I think about when I wake up every day and I think, the sun is shining, the flowers are blooming, whatever, that's in nature. It's winter, Baruch Hashem, my steam went on. It's whatever, it's summer, thank God for air conditioning. All these things that we really don't think about so much, right? I will never forget, I don't know where you people were, but I don't know how many years ago it was. It was already quite a few years ago when there was this insane, totally unexpected, crazy blackout in New York in the summer. Literally, and it was not the first blackouts that that I lived through in my life, but this was like unparalleled. It was pure insanity. Because you never in my life, I sat outside on Eastern Park in front of my steps, and I said to my husband, this is the weirdest thing. You know what's so weird? It was never this quiet. And you don't realize there's always a hum. Always, always, always. It was deadly silent. It was frightful almost, because even there was nothing, except that there were no cars, because there were no, none of the traffic lights, nothing. Total. There was no hum of electricity, nothing. And then I started to realize, wow, do we see how much we take for granted? It's electricity. Who created electricity? It's Hashem did this all. I remember hearing later first it took a while till everything was restored. Like a while, I don't mean hours, I mean days. So except that it was insanely hot and muggy and everything else, but it was finally coming to Erev Shabbos, and everybody had the same thought: are we gonna have electricity for Shabbos or not? Are we gonna be able to, all those things? And then we started hearing that it was going like by neighborhood. So we heard that Park Slope, their electricity was coming back on. And for some reason, I don't remember why, but I was in Park Slope. We must have gone to walk because you couldn't really drive. There were no, traffic lights or anything. And I will never forget how I was just passing by a store, and a storekeeper came out, not Jewish, and he said to the storekeeper next to him, the light suddenly went on. He said, "Oh, wow. Now we have to, think about all the things that are in our freezers and refrigerators that were basically, gone, whatever." Some stores were actually very smart. They saw it's not coming on, so they opened up and they said, "Everybody come take whatever you want." It was easier than having to clean up the mess, But, and I will never forget how this one non-Jew said to the other one, "Wow, I never thought I'd say this because I'm really an atheist. Thank God." And it was so funny, like everybody just stood there laughing, but it was so, so true, because suddenly what happened? We started to realize I just put up 3 of them here, but these are we start to realize, God, if I look it's exactly what David Melech describes. If I look, Hashem is with me, Hashem is always good. If I could just think in this way, that no matter what happens to me, no matter what happens to the world, what happens to everybody around me, Hashem is benevolent, Hashem is good. He knows what's good better than I know. When I sometimes really get this feeling, you're going to think I'm a little crazy, but if I go to the Ohel and I'm thinking what to write in my pan, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and as I'm going there, I'm thinking all the things I'm going to ask for, right? I have so many things, I have a million things. Then I sit down to write it, and you know what happens to me every time? I take my pen and I say, you know what? After thinking about this, I'm just going to write, God, give me what I need, because what I need more than I know. I don't even know what to, And then I start to realize that it really is all about God knows a lot better than me. He knows what's really good. All I know is Hashem, just make it revealed good, because I'm a simple mortal who lives here in this Golus, and to me, it's too painful when it's not revealed. So I want it to be revealed. But if we could live with this, that Hashem is always good, that Hashem, He takes care of everything in the world. It doesn't matter if it's nature related, if it's business related, if it's politically related, it does not matter. Hashem sees and knows and takes care of everything. So why am I worrying? And of course, that it's not only like that, but it has that extra unbelievable element that Hashem is caring and compassionate. He cares about us like a father. And He cares about us that no matter what, He will take care of us. He will carry us. Yes, of course.
I have this question, let's say with people, so how do you know if you trust them if they do something good for you in the past? And you're like, okay, they'll do good for me in the future. But with Hashem, if He showed that He did hard things, and you're kind of like, okay, He'll do it again now. Here you go. So it's like you're trying to say, well, Hashem's good and everything does is good, but if His past behavior, obviously it's not nice to say about Hashem, was not always so easy, even though obviously it really is easy. I mean, it really is good, but it didn't seem good. Then how are you even able to trust Him?
Okay, it's a very, very good question.
All I know is people. I don't know.
Right. Okay. And that reminds me of when I don't know if any of you probably don't know who Shimshon Stock was, but he was a very, very amazing character in Crown Heights. He was a real Baal Shem Tov Jew. And he had, I could spend the whole year telling you about him, but you could actually see a video of him going to the Rebbe. He was, Chaver Simcha Shabbos B'Yantiv. It's a charity organization here. It was his organization. Now his son runs it. And he once, Yud Aleph Nissen, for the Rebbe's birthday, he's online. And he comes to the Rebbe and he says to the Rebbe, we need you. I want to give you a bracha. You should be healthy and take us out because we need you. We need you to bring Mashiach. So the Rebbe looks at him. They had a very interesting relationship. And the Rebbe says to him, well, this you have to talk to God. Why is the Mashiach? This you have to talk to God. So he says to the Rebbe, well, I don't know God, but I know you. So I'm talking to you, and it's like so real because it's similar to what you're saying. And the truth of the matter is that the only way I can't really answer that question, but the only thing I could say is that, Reb Menachem Mendel of Kotz, the Kotzker Rebbe, somebody said to me, I don't believe in God. So he said to the person, you know what, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. Why? Because we have a picture of God, all of us. I'm not saying you, okay? All of us. And because we only know human relationships, like you say, so we say like this, but take, exactly like what you say. You were nice to me till now. So you're a nice person. That's it. But the question comes up, what happens if you have a relationship with somebody and they're a spouse and you love each other, and one day one does something that's really not appreciated by the other? I don't mean something, abusive, but something, and you get upset and you say, I can't stay with you. I can't, this is not a relationship. Why? Because you disappointed me. Okay, I'm human, you're human, and you know what? If we really made a pact to stay with each other and to love each other, let's work it out, because we're human. We could disappoint each other sometimes. It's possible. And so the real message really is that, yes, sometimes we do feel disappointed by Hashem. We really do, especially if we come from that vantage point to begin with, especially if we come already feeling like we were hurt. And many of us do, because our circumstances in life are such that they're hurtful, they're painful. What should somebody say who never had a good day in their life? So they can't even imagine that there could be a good day. But we never could forget that we never see the whole picture. That's the thing. I'm sure you've all heard this 100 times, but I love it because it's so concrete. The magnificent tapestry that's hanging on the wall, something beautiful, woven by a real expert artist. It's just gorgeous. Such a stunning picture. Every detail is just vibrant and gorgeous. And then they take you behind, they take off the hanging from the wall and they let you see the back of it. It looks horrendous. All these knotted pieces of wool and it's just one big mumble jumble. It so doesn't resemble what they see in the front. It's always used as a mashal, that what we see here is what we see here in front of our eyes, of mere mortals. We see this and we think this is what the world is all about, but we don't really see. We're really seeing the knots, and we don't see the real beautiful picture, which will certainly emerge. It's like, I don't even want to bring this up because it's so, I still shudder when I think about it, but it really shook me to my core when, after this terrible, horrific tragedy in Miron, I don't know if you saw it later, it was also sent around with an English translation, but if you see the original Hebrew, it's mind-boggling. And one of the fathers who lost 2 sons, and what's he saying? He's saying, all he's saying is, God, you took away my flesh, my blood, my love, just do me one favor. God, do me one favor. It's all I do. Not take away my emunah and bitachon. That's all I care about. Do not take that away. If you don't take that away, basically he's saying, then I'll be able to continue living. And you think about that, seems so almost antithetical to humanity, right? But you start to realize that this is the real reality that we hold on to. It's almost like the joke. Somebody at our Shabbos table once said to my husband, I'll never forget. And I was thinking, oh my God, what's he going to answer? I would be burying myself. He's like, what do you do, Rabbi? What are you going to do if you find out that all of this belief, all this is just a hoax? And he said, without betting an eyelash, she said, guess what? It's better than the alternative. Would you have wanted to live not believing in something? So it's hard. It's no question that it's very, very hard. But the fact that we live with hope and the fact that we live with belief, it changes everything. Why? Because it makes us understand that what are we believing in? We're believing in something that is a greater being, a greater entity than anything that we could even imagine. None of it is none of it is something even on a scale that we could begin to comprehend. And I think that sometimes it's very hard to remember that, but then we just start looking around. Look, I always go back to this thing when I say to myself, I mean, it's a famous thing. Everybody knows it. So how do you know God created the world? You saw him, but how do you know? I know I didn't see him, but I know one thing, that everything that exists was created somehow, right? Would somebody go and stand in front of a beautiful building and say this was built without an architect? Would somebody stand in front of a beautiful garden and say that this was, how did it come into being? I have this book. How did this book happen? Somebody had to have written it. And when we look around in this world, yes, we really do not understand. It makes absolutely zero sense. But one of the things that we do learn from this whole idea of is exactly what David HaMelech says. That why does he say that, when I'm in greener pastures and when I'm in trouble, all those things, he says, because even in the good days, I know that there might be days that are not good. I know that could happen, but I know that even then, Hashem will carry me. Hashem will take care of me. Hashem will make sure that everything is done for the good, etc. Okay, it's not going to work over here though. Okay, so now I see it's somehow it's not. I think it's.
Do you want to go down?
Nah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's fine. Really, it's not a problem. So it just, we could actually send, if you want, we could send it out to people and they could go through it if they want. Whatever.
Okay.
Whatever works. I don't know. It might take a long time because it's probably not. Anyway, so the joke is, can money buy happiness? No, we know it can't. But if you take $1 and look at it, it can. I'll tell you why. Because what does it say on the dollar? In God we trust. And bitachon is really one of the things that could really buy us happiness, because it helps us alleviate the stress and the struggle that we feel. If you have here's some examples. If you have a lot of stress and you know that you could trust in Hashem, it definitely takes. I often think to myself, how do people live through such things when they don't believe in Hashem? It's definitely much harder. There's no question. When we have worries, we try. When we have, life was so uncertain all this time through COVID and everything else. And I really felt every day, especially in that horrible time, people were just dropping. Thinking of thank God that we have something to hold on to. Thank God that we are able to see beyond the here and now right this minute. And I'll give you another, it's not just something that it just came to my mind, but I think it sometimes gives a good explanation of how we could understand why it's difficult to have bitachon. It's difficult, why? Because we don't see the entity that we are putting our belief and trust in. So in the very early 1960s, you probably heard about this, probably learned about it, that one of the big campaigns that the Rebbe did was he started to speak about women wearing a sheitel. And it was really massive mesiras nefesh, real self-sacrifice to wear a sheitel then. I mean, I heard things from my grandmother, my mother, friends, relatives. I mean, there was no such thing as going to buy a sheitel like you go today. You had to go to a person that made the wigs from scratch. There were a few women who came out of Europe. Actually, one I knew, she was saved from the Holocaust because she knew this art of weaving here, and she was asked by some of these creeps to that's how her life was saved. He put her to work. Anyway, and the bottom line was, you would not, a sheitel, let's just put it mildly, was not what a sheitel is today, and it was not exactly flattering. And if you really wanted to look good, that was the last thing that you probably wanted to put on your head. And it was very, very unusual. So you would really stick out, and who wanted to do that, right? But the Rebbe started asking people to wear sheitel. And the Rebbe kept telling people, if you will wear it and somebody will see you, they'll say, oh, if she could wear it, I could wear it. And the Rebbe made a real serious campaign. But let me tell you, whoever did it was real. They really, really did what the Rebbe wanted, and it was not easy for them. The Rebbe promised people amazing brachas, and they say how it came through. Really, really. Anyway, there were different times where the Rebbe spoke about it, and there was one sikha where the Rebbe spoke about this, about wearing a sheitel. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing now because that's not the topic that we're talking about. But I do want to say one thing he said. He said, somebody wrote to me and said, listen, it's so hard. I believe that all these brachas are going to come if I wear a sheitel. But it's so hard to believe it. How do I know? It's so hard. So the Rebbe said, I'll give you, I hear it's very hard, but I want to tell you something. If somebody came to you and said to you, give me $10 or give me $1 and I will invest it and you will get back $100, would you do it? The Rebbe said, yes, if the person was a good investor and you knew that he was good for his word, usually you would take, even if it's a gamble, you would take the gamble and you would say yes, because the rewards will be far greater, even if you lose the dollar. Okay. So, or if somebody came, if you have a child, a baby, and the baby cannot digest its formula, and it's sick. This baby's becoming very sick from the formula. So what does the mother do? This is what the Rebbe is saying. She goes to the pediatrician, and she says to the pediatrician, "Please help me. I don't know what to do. My baby cannot digest food. Baby's sick." And the doctor examines the baby, and the doctor says to the mother, "Listen, this formula is not good for this baby. You have to change this child's formula." So the Rebbe says, what would you say to the doctor? Would you say to the doctor, 1 minute, how do I know what you're saying is true? You know what? First, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to study pediatric nutrition. I'll get a degree, and then I'll see if what you're saying is true. And if it's true, then I'll change my baby's formula. The Rebbe said, no normal mother would do that because her baby wouldn't survive in the process. So because you put your trust in this doctor, he studied, he knows, yes, he might be right. Hopefully he's right. And even on the chance that he isn't, you take the example because you want, the Rebbe said, this is how we have to think about how Hashem promises us things that if we want to believe in Hashem, Hashem says, I'm taking care of you. I'm giving you brachas. This is the same thing. The only reason why it's so difficult, and this is mamish the Rebbe's words, I'm just saying it in English paraphrase, is because we don't see him and we don't hear from him saying, I promise you that I will take care of you, etc. But we're maminim, b'nei maminim, and we believe it because we are children of people, all of us together, we're there ourselves. We said, Nasa v'nishma. We didn't even first say, let me hear about the goods. We said, okay, I'll buy the goods. Now let me see them. We, who does that? But that's what we did. And that's really what our life is based on. And I want to just tell you something very interesting. And it's in this video. So even if nothing else, we could WhatsApp you the video if you want.
We actually sent out some because we trust Hashem. Because we saw that he was trustworthy. Exactly. And even though it sounds, and you're 100% right. Look, I don't know if you ever saw this. I hate to bring in this negative. It's not, sad, but in the end, it's not sad. Yeah, you ever heard this woman, Miriam? I think her name is Miriam Peretz from Israel Speak. Yeah. So, okay. So I was actually once at an event where she spoke live, and I was talking to her. She is an Israeli woman who lost a husband and 2 sons in wars in Israel. I mean, it's just beyond comprehension, right? But what did she do? She turned herself into a rock of strength for everybody else. Goes around, she actually went, you could see on Facebook now, you could see she went, it just pops up in my thing, I don't know, not right now, but after Miron happened, Miriam Peretz, she went to be Menachem Avot to different families. And you see one of them, she's speaking to the children of one of the, what'd you say? Yes, exactly. And you see her, she's talking to the children and she's telling them, yes, it's, it's a terrible tragedy. And she says, I lived through it. I know, she could, but listen, and you should cry and you have to cry and all that. And you should talk about your father and but you should also know that you also have to be strong. And you also have to, and when you have a simcha, you have to have a simcha. When you have, why? Because God knows everything he's doing. And you see, she
feels it with her entire being. And, I don't know if she's, I hate to put labels to people. I don't know, I don't care. Everybody has their own level of connection to God, but her connection is like beyond real. It's so rock solid. Why? Because she decided this is her mission. Her mission in life had to never come through something so tragic, but she could have just laid down and died too, and nobody would blame her. But she decided that, and that's one of the things actually that Chassidus teaches us, which is a big part of the bitachon, that it's not only bitachon, what is our life about? It's not only about the end result, we have to find the happiness in the journey. I heard this actually from one of the Rosh Chodesh Society chapters. We have a whole group that do it in France. We have everything translated into French. And one of them sent me a message from a woman who comes to her class, who is a 4-time cancer survivor. And she said, she sent me this thing that this woman put together, and she translated it for me because I didn't understand it. And basically she made this beautiful picture, and she said, and I love it, I use it all the time. So the world, people say, there's light at the end of the tunnel. She says, that's true, it's very nice, it's beautiful, but that's not really how we're supposed to live. She says, you know how you should live? Be the light in the tunnel. And that's brilliant, because we're always waiting what's going to be. Soon it's going to be good. Yes, for sure. We should always live like that, the future's going to be better and better. What about right now? Right now, I could also be the light. Even in darkness, I could be the light. It's like, somebody asked the Rebbetzin, what was the happiest moment of your life? Rebbetzin Haimushka, without missing a beat, she said, right now, this minute. And that is a way of living that you really enjoy. You try to find the good in every moment of life, even though it doesn't mean that there's no sadness around us. I wish it meant that. That will be, when Mashiach comes, the Golus will be rid of all the, horrible things. But we have a video of this, which we made. There is a professor, a doctor, a psychologist named Dr. David Rosmarin. He's a frum Jew. And in 2010, he made a study. He did a study. He decided, he went through different parts of the Torah and Chavos Halavavos and things like that. And he found places in the Torah where it talks about bitachon and how, a person's life can be changed for the better through believing. And he came up with a whole, a whole system of, he made a study. What was the study? He took 3 groups. He's a very well-known clinician and researcher. He took 3 groups of patients. They were all Jewish, but they were of various, levels of observance. Some were totally secular. They self-proclaimed, said they don't really have any God, okay? Others were whatever. And he divided them into 3 groups. They all suffered from very similar types of anxiety and stress, clinically. They were really, what wasn't a joke. And and for a few weeks, they came up with this protocol, and they had to follow it. And you can actually look up the whole protocol. It's very interesting. And what was it? Different things. And what were each group though one did nothing. They did the same treatment that they were doing the whole time. The same therapy, the same everything. A second one, their thing was to have some kind of meditation, and I forgot what it was called exactly. And on top of their regular therapies, they did that. And the third group, they were given some things to study about bitachon and amunah, and everybody had to make notations and had to, follow the program, whatever. And then they assessed it. And he shows literally on graphs how one of the groups, nothing changed. Another group was very, very, very minute, almost nothing. And the group that studied about God, how much more happiness and satisfaction and less stress, and it's all documented. And you see from this, why? Because when we have a belief, when we believe in something, it changes everything. If we believe that we are here for a reason, and God put us here for a purpose. And why did I end up here? I ended up here because it says, Shomer Hashem, and Hashem leads people. He leads the footsteps of the human being. If you end up somewhere, I end up somewhere, I bump into someone, etc., there is a reason for that. What's the reason? The reason is it's part of my journey. And if I believe that, and if I look at everything like that, it takes a lot of the worry off me. You ever miss a bus or a plane or a train? That's one famous example, right? Or you're in traffic or whatever the case is. You just say, we all know the 12-step program's very famous, let go and let God. That's a very, very Torah approach. If you think about it, let go of all your worries, all your stresses, all your issues. You know what? Hashem, you made me. You gave me all these things. Now help me deal with it. It's why do we find it okay to say that to a human being? But it's hard to say it, to believe with Hashem, because like we said, we want we understand human connection, or things that we could see and feel and touch. Same, that's why do we so sad when somebody leaves this world? Because we interact with their physical body. We don't have their body anymore. The soul stayed here. The soul is still here. But it's very hard for me because I'm much closer to my body than to my soul on a regular day, right? So that's how I feel like interacting. Okay, so you are with me, Hashem is with me. Said Hashem establishes the steps of man. Why did Hashem bring me here? Our travels are not random. Everything here is, yes, sure.
Okay, this is just not a question, but basically, one time I was thinking on Shabbos how a lot of struggles that I had, it brought me to a better place. And it was just so cool how I was let's say I had a certain roommate. At first it was whatever, and then it taught me something else, and then I was able to deal with another situation because of her. So I was thinking of how shoots and ladders.
Yes.
So I was thinking to make my own one, and just see how Hashem is so
that's a brilliant idea, actually.
It's I go down, it's oh my God, I had her, and I thought whoa, whatever, and then it's oh, this happened because of that. When I see, so I actually thought to just leave my own life, just to remind myself that Hashem has a home story. That's actually such a great idea. I love it. Yeah.
It's really a great idea because it's so concrete. Exactly. See, okay, now you're going to take it all the way through. It's concrete. It's real. You know what I'm saying? You could actually,
It also just makes me think more of that mindset.
Right, 100%.
In the past, and then it's yeah, whatever.
That's actually a very good point. But even if you think about it, it's already, you know what I'm saying? It makes you have that mindset of actually thinking, instead of knowing that you can always go back there and actually look and see. Because the truth is, a lot of people do this all the time. It's universal. People journal and they write every day. I have to think of one good thing or two good things. I have to write that, whatever. People say, I'm not even talking about Jews, right? People say, oh, I didn't realize how many blessings I had in my life. And why? Because don't forget, we also live in a world where, thank God, I'm not complaining. Hashem should make it always like this. But if I want bread, I don't even have to go to the grocery store or to the bakery. I could just call and they'll bring it to me, right? Now imagine our ancestors, if they wanted bread, you know what they had to do? They had to get the wheat, and they had to, that whole process, it's unbelievable. But you know what? In a certain sense, their life was more wholesome because they were busy and they knew exactly the direction they were going in. There was nothing taken for granted. Baruch Hashem, we take a lot of things for granted today. I'm saying Baruch Hashem because I'm very grateful to live in this era. I really am. I really, really, truly am. And I hope that things will keep on getting better and better for everybody. It just reminds us, though, that we have to think back. People say, I would ask my grandmother things, and she would say, sometimes we were just surviving. All our energy was being put into surviving. We could not think of anything else. Thank Hashem, you don't have to live like that, but it's like everything else. It's like the multitude and the plenty, it brings with it other things. So really, I think that, Hashem created human beings that we should be able to figure out how to do this. But, when we think about this Perek Tilim, Chaf Gimel, that it really encompasses everything. Well, everything that you want to know about, why you should have Bitachon and Amunah, what you could, it says it in there. These are the reasons why, because Hashem is benevolent, he's good, he's kind, because he takes care of everything and everyone, and because he's very compassionate. He really cares about us. It reminds me of that maybe you heard it, but I love it. A lot of people say it never really happened, but I don't know. Like I say, don't ask questions on a story. I actually got once a book. Somebody gave me a book and it was written in there. But I think if you Google it today, you'll probably get 100 versions of it. But anyway, the way the story was written in that original book many years ago, it was all about different like pieces of memories of excerpts of different musical personalities. And one of them that they wrote about was Luciano Pavarotti, the famous tenor. So he describes that it was going to be the 100th year of the famous opera hall La Scala in Milan, Italy. And because of that, they were having a massive celebration. And everybody, who was somebody, managed to get a ticket to this great concert. But of course, it was sold out right away. And everybody was waiting. Whoever couldn't get in was waiting outside in case they'll hear a note, whatever. And finally, the concert begins, and Mr. Famous Pavarotti comes out on stage, and he sings a couple of things, and then he says, in honor of this 100th anniversary of this opera hall, I'm going to sing something I never sang anywhere before. It's a brand new rendition of Psalm number 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And he lapses into this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful song. And when he finishes, everybody stands up and gives him an amazing standing ovation. He says, finally, he had to, for 5 minutes, they wouldn't stop clapping. Finally, he showed everybody, please to sit down. And everybody sat down, and he was about to go into his next song. And suddenly they hear a voice, and it's coming from the very top tier, the cheapest seat in the hall, all the way on top of the highest gallery. And this little short man with a beard suddenly lapses into his own rendition of "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And it's very clear from his accent and his look that he's a little yiddle, But it's stunning. It's so gorgeous that nobody shushes him. And he finishes singing. And it's for us 2 seconds, it's deadly silent. And then again, the entire hall rises up and starts applauding like mad. And finally, Pavarotti shows them, everyone, that they should sit down. And he says to this guy, he booms his voice across to him, and he says, "Wow, that was unbelievable. Even I never heard anything like this. That's just outrageous. But I want to ask you something. I know that when I sang my rendition, it was beautiful. I know it was. And I saw how much everybody applauded. But there was something different about when you sang it, because not only did you get a standing ovation like I did, but you managed to do something else. Look around. You made everybody in this hall cry." Everybody had tears streaming down their eyes. And he says to the Siddur, "So tell me, what do you know about this rendition that I don't know?" And in his little broken, halting English, he says, "Well, sir, Mr. Pavarotti, with all due respect, you know the psalm, but I know the shepherd." So I think that's really what it's about. It's about knowing that Hashem is our Father. He's ours. We know him. It's like imagine in the depths of a human being's despair. No one should ever have that. Or just watch a child or watch anybody. When somebody is like frightened or really needs something, what's the first thing you say? "Ma!" Like you just give a scream, right? "Ma," or "ta," right? Even if you're 75, it doesn't make a difference. It's this like primal thing that a parent will save you, somebody that cares about you. That's really what this is all about. It's that we have that unbelievable, and by the way, one of the things I really want to just say is that, we said value your journey as much as your destination, that sometimes we feel, like you say, sometimes there's ups and there's downs. And when we have the downs, we feel, okay, now this was like a real bad curveball. Like, what happened to my journey? I was doing good. What happened? And we realize sometimes the journey itself is what's leading us to somewhere And we don't have to only wait till we get to that destination. We have to live on the destination. You know how many things could happen on this destination? How many people I could meet, how many lives I could change, how many good things I could do, how many things I could learn, etc., etc. It's like the famous thing that somebody wrote to the Rebbe about all their sorrows and troubles. And the Rebbe is very sharp with them. And the Rebbe says, you ask about all the things that you want and need and that people owe you. Did you ever ask yourself what you owe other people or what you should do for the world? Think about it that way. That's what really changes that mindset of like we take something for granted or we look at something as it's granted to us. It's almost like, you know, the world is all worrying about, especially today. I mean, I know in certain places we wouldn't be able to say this, you know, everybody's worrying about their rights, right? Everybody's worrying about their rights. This group, they need this right. So this group, they need that right. You know what the Torah tells us? Don't ask about your rights, ask what your obligations are. What are my obligations? Then if I know my obligations and I fulfill them, then I could worry about my rights. So it's that whole mindset of, you know, of having that feeling. And yes.
Sorry, this was
sure.
Like in my head for a really long time.
Yeah. You're going to get out of your head. You're going to go past that point. That's great.
And it keeps coming up while you're talking. So you were talking about before, like when you have like something that bothers you or that you're upset about, there's like that concept of talking to your friend, or there's that concept of like just filling your mind with positivity. I'm just like thinking how the right way to say it, but like
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, is it like could you just when like you're feeling, let's say, like upset or angry or whatever it is, your emotional feeling is, can you just like throw it past and just be like keep moving and just like positive stuff? Or are you meant to like address it, work through it? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that I'll talk about myself, okay? I think many human beings in general, sometimes, like, let's say you have something that's bothering you, right? Whatever it is, okay? I don't know. And sometimes the more you think about it, the more you worry about it, the bigger it becomes. Like, for example, this is another thing you see, it's in a video, you could see it from the Rebbe. A woman comes past the Rebbe and she says to the Rebbe that she and her husband, they have a problem with their child, their son. You saw that? It's unbelievable, such an excellent lesson. The Rebbe says, what's the problem? And she says, he's in school, he's not happy in school, he's not. The Rebbe says, is he have a problem learning? She says, no, he's a good student. She doesn't have a problem, but he's just not happy and he's not nice to his brothers and he's not, you know, whatever. I forgot all the details because it's sort of a long time, but the main point is this. The Rebbe listens very, you know, and then the Rebbe says something that's an excellent lesson in her life. The Rebbe says, basically he's telling her, everything's okay, he's happy. Don't make it into a problem. You know, sometimes you don't have, if you make it into a problem, it becomes a bigger problem. So the question that you ask, I think that sometimes we need somebody, like let's say I had a situation, I didn't know if it was, you know, and in my mind, it was becoming so overblown, I couldn't get past it, right? Then I realized, you know what, I have to go ask somebody, is this really an issue? Is this really as big of an issue as I think it has become in my mind? And if I talk to somebody that's not, you know, they're not subjective then suddenly it starts to become much less of an issue. This is one of the reasons why sometimes people would ask that, but why aren't you speaking about this issue that's happening in the world, whatever it was, right? And never answered, because some things you don't have to speak about because you just give them credence and they don't even deserve credence because they're not even worth that. So sometimes it's so, you know, it's almost like, you ever have a situation like let's say anybody here a teacher?
Yeah.
Work in a classroom? Okay, so sometimes you have like, I don't know, you see a child do something sometimes
You just ignore
you
it.
you might do better ignoring it. Exactly. Like I was teaching in high school. They had, you're not allowed to bring, you have to know which child it's gonna. You could make somebody's life or break somebody's life with the silliest,
Most of the
smallest
time,
thing.
I think it depends a lot on the situation. Like,
Exactly.
if you have time to deal with it, like let's say you're in the middle of work and a thought comes up, and like now's not the time. So you could just be like, oh, I hear you, but now I'm in the middle of working. So like you just continue on with happiness. But like if you have time to deal with it, this is what I think, then you kind of like deal with it, but not as it's a huge problem. It's like I noticed that it's there and it's gonna be fine, but you still address it because you can't just ignore things.
Like I used to just like
But I
switch
think-
into like gummy with
Right. But that is.
It's like in the answer to that chassid, he actually says to him, so so you have to think of something else, right? Like switch out the thought to something else. But he says that it could be, and he says the best thing is to be busy with other things like, let's say kviyas itim b'Torah, right? Okay, so but he says even if it's not that, even if it's something that just is a very power of a thing. It's not necessarily a Torah mitzvah thing, but it could help you get rid of that thought. You could do it. So there's really 2 points here. One point is, how do you know if it's something that's, but the thing is, it becomes, if you think that it's something that needs to be addressed, I think every person is the best judge of that. You know what I'm saying? Like you think, okay, listen, this is bothering me and I have to take care of it. So you take care of it. If you could say to yourself, it's bothering me, but I could just leave it on hold for now. I'll come back to it. You ever have that? By the way, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
And then you come back and it's like, it wasn't actually such a big deal. You know what I mean?
But also, I
So,
think that it's not
it'll-
good to like just keep switching because you're ignoring yourself. Like, you can't
Right.
just be like, everything's fine.
No, but you know what else does happen? Sometimes the mood that we're in raises or lowers the level of what we feel, the seriousness of something. Like if you're ever having a really bad day, let's say, like everything goes wrong. I hope you never do. But those days, like whatever, your alarm clock doesn't ring and you're late and everything, everything. And then you bump into somebody or I don't know, somebody says something not nice, okay? If you're in a really bad mood and you're already like whatever they said could feel really, really hurtful, as opposed to if you're a happy-go-lucky on a, you know what I'm saying? And she says, you say, big deal. She's not nice. I'm nice. You know what I mean? Like you just, that's what happens. It becomes like so I do think that, yes, I think that, we cannot put our head in the sand and we can't live like, babies, okay, but we have to have that balance. That's, by the way, that's the hardest part of being in this world. That's the question of the golus, is that we have everything in our life is balanced from the second we are born. Why? Because we're in a neshama and a guf. That is such a dichotomy to begin with. Our whole life, we are really two entities.
So it's not like I've had so many conversations about this with so many different friends. It's just like, but like that's why we're like, okay, let's just go ask an expert.
Oh no, I'm not an expert. Trust me, I am not an expert. I just think that it is an individual thing, but I think that it's a general thing. We could say it's like saying, like in general, I think that one of the things that the Rebbe always taught us was that if somebody has an issue, they should go in something it's really bothering them, whatever the issue is. If they go and they talk to somebody that is knowledgeable in that area, whatever that area is, it will help them. And now we see, the reasons why, because A, they want to help you. B, you clarify the issue in your own mind. C, whatever it is. The people, Rebbe told many people, by the way, to learn the Sefer Chayvus Halavavos when they had all kinds of problems. Like somebody, my father-in-law was once very sick in the hospital, and somebody came to visit him, and he said that the Rebbe told him to learn to read. Yeah,
Exactly what we're doing next week.
exactly. My pleasure. Anyway, yes, go ahead.
No, I just like to ask,
Yeah, this was the kickoff of the Shaar HaBitachon.
Yes.
Anyway, ladies, it was great to see you all, and let's hope and pray that before next week, we will be learning together in Yerushalayim. Oh, we will know so many things that it's going to be amazing. We'll know all the answers. We'll see behind the tapestry, I think. And whatever. Listen, I always say, somebody says, what's going to happen? I said, I don't know. I'm not worried about what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. I'll be happy. Whatever happens, I know it's going to be good. It's not. It's hard to to. Anyway, anybody want to share something?
I do actually.
Please.
I wanted to start the first section that you spoke about sharing it with somebody. It's actually very powerful because Monday nights we're doing a talk on Shalom Bayis.
Right.
And one of the keys that we keep discussing is connecting with your spouse and making sure that you both feel understood. And just feeling like the other person understands you from your perspective and you understand him from his perspective, that in of itself helps settle many things as opposed to bickering at each other. So that in of itself, and another piece that you spoke about, which I also want to connect to Monday night, is what you just said about the story that like if you're having a really hard day and somebody says something to you that isn't so pleasant, it gets blown out of proportion. So it's another concept that we discuss about, like in a certain sense, taking your emotional pulse. Like where are you holding before this hard conversation that's about to happen in your marriage? Be aware of, you're coming from a full day of hard struggles. How are you gonna approach that for the future? So I want to share that.
Right. I feel like there's a lot of good old wives, what the world would call old wives' tales that get passed down from grandmothers to whatever. Like I remember when I was growing up. Real wives' tales, exactly. I remember once coming home and I literally thought it was like something written in the Torah. I asked my father, what does it say? This is Shulchan Aruch. He started laughing. I was like, I heard in school, that when if a husband is on, I must have been like a seminary or something, I don't know. If a husband is let's say went away on a business trip or something, or he went to work, whatever, and he's coming home after a long days of work or whatever, you should make sure that before you discuss it, make sure there's a good supper on the table. And literally we heard it feeling like it's like a halacha. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever. It's like my father was like, my grandmother was like, yes, it's excellent halacha. It's called common sense. She's like, common sense is not so common,
My mom always said that common sense is the least common of the senses.
By the way, it really is. That's what they say about the guy. In order to get smicha, to become a rav, you have to take a rigorous test, right? And it's on the 4 halakim of the Shulchan Aruch, all the 4 different parts. So they tell the story about the guy who came. First, he was tested on the first part, excellent. Then the rav tested him on the second, then the third, and then he asked him in each one, what did you learn? And then he tested and said he came. What did you learn in the 4th haluk? And he told him, and he tested him, says, and with the same straight face, what did you learn in the 5th haluk? And this guy was like, what? I spent my whole life learning. Finally, the guy says, tell me. So he says, sorry, with all due respect, there is no 5th haluk. He says, you flunk. He says, what? He says, it's called, the 5th haluk is called common sense. And if you don't have that one, the first 4 are not going to help you. And it's in life, it is probably one of, being a mensch and having common sense is the most, I really, really, really believe that. I think it's the most important part of everything. Because if 2 people could be civil and nice and care about each other, they could work out anything under the sun. Mm-hmm. But if chas v'shalom, they can't, doesn't mean that people will, in life, things happen. People have bad days, people, whatever. But as a general rule, it's a really, really important thing just to remember.